This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources. Consistent with its Running Right process, Alpha is an energy company committed to being a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward. We fuel progress around the world. More information at alphanr.com.
Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or terrain Denali, on Midlothian Turnpike in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Taking it to the streets and helping our community. Intelligent Illuminations. We make streetlights smart and give you control, providing secure point-to-point wireless solutions for roadway and area lighting, helping you manage, monitor, and control your streetlights. More information at ilooms.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com.
It's amazing what my students with special needs can accomplish. Their pride is priceless. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome back to Secretary of Education Anne Holton. Thank you again for being on This Week in Richmond. We're having a conversation after crossover in the General Assembly, and still some time before the session ends, and look forward to your updating our viewers around the Commonwealth on the key education initiatives from the governor, from your office, and what's happening in the General Assembly. So thank you for being here.
Great, David. Thank you. As always, a pleasure to be with you.
Yes. So what would be the issue you'd want to start with?
Well, lots going on in education, and I'm happy to say that lots of it of a very bipartisan nature. You know that Governor McAuliffe talks every chance he gets about the new Virginia economy and about how important education is to that. And one of the things we've been working on very hard over the last 6 months really is our SOL innovation work. Our SOL Innovation Committee started meeting in the summer and came up with some really wonderful interim recommendations that have been translated into a number of pieces of legislation that are all doing very well so far at crossover point of the Assembly, that I think are really going to help our localities in the spirit of freeing up a little more creativity, giving them some more options, and helping make our testing accountability system work better.
Well, I know that legislators are giving a lot of attention and importance to this SOL Innovation Committee, because there would have been some that wanted to move more rapidly, and the word I think they were getting was, let's see what the committee comes up with.
Yeah. And the committee has just done a really, really terrific job. You know from when you and I have talked before, that one of my passions, and really one of the reason Governor McAuliffe asked me to do this job, is my concern for our kids in our most challenged communities, and how are we going to help those schools and those kids do better. And we have a very, very strong overall K-12 system, but we have some very, very substantial and persistent achievement gaps. And our accountability system has done a good job of identifying some of our problems and has not done a good job of helping those schools come up. And I'm very excited that one of the Innovation Committee recommendations that I hope is headed towards passage in this year's General Assembly is one that will direct the Board of Education to take some steps in the accreditation system to recognize and reward growth and progress, so that when we have schools that move significantly from one point to another, but maybe aren't quite making it to the benchmark, that we don't declare them a failure and derail all those efforts, but rather reward and recognize their steps along the way.
Some good positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a there was a school principal, Pamela Smith, from an elementary school in Bristol that the name is escaping me right now, but I had an opportunity to visit, I think, Highland View in the spring, and this principal who came and spoke at a number of different committee meetings here really made an impression of everybody, talking about the challenges her kids face, and her teachers are bringing these kids in first thing in the morning and checking for who might need food because they're coming to school hungry, who might need the services of the laundry machines even before the day gets started. They're just really wrapping their arms around these kids and giving them everything they need. They're a very transient population, moving back and forth even across state lines down there, certainly across jurisdiction lines, which is very challenging. And yet they're making progress.
Yes,
academically,
right.
This principal, I think she's in her second or third year there, and they had bottomed out. She was brought in to help turn things around and has turned things around, and they've made very significant strides, moving up 14, 15 points on their SOL pass rates in both reading and math. I think 2 years in a row. So they were starting from a low enough point that they can be making big strides and not be at the benchmarks yet. And their science and their history have fallen off some. So barring a miracle, they won't be fully accredited on all
Right.
scores this year. By the general scheme of things, we should be declaring them, they've been in warning status for too long, we should be declaring them a failure and then ordering a complete school transformation where you throw out the principal or throw out all the teachers or essentially throw out all the students, close the school, start over. It just doesn't make any sense not to recognize and reward that progress that she and those great teachers are doing. And I'm really happy the General Assembly's looking at that.
Oh, that is exciting. We want our viewers to know, too, that if they go on the website, and we'll have the address up on the screen,
Good.
that they can get general information and they can get information on SOL innovation and everything else that's going on.
Yes. We have a really terrific group serving on this committee. It includes legislators, includes parents, teachers, educators from all across the Commonwealth, folks from different backgrounds, business people, and they've worked really well together. So far, we've done a series of interim recommendations that were things that we thought could be useful to the General Assembly or the Board of Education right away. And then now we're sort of taking a step back and saying, okay, the group committees are meeting now, but we'll be meeting again as a full group in March, saying, well, what if we were to what would be the accountability 2.0? Virginia's sort of led the curve, both historically and in terms of rigor in the current accountability scheme that is being implemented really all across the nation. And yet, because we were ahead of the curve, we've now gotten to the point where we're realizing some of its limitations and some of the frustrations. And one of our committee chairs calls it taming the pendulum. We're not trying to throw the system out. We're not trying to throw the system out. It's served us well. We've made some real strides. Our graduation rates are well up. On our academics, any measure you look at that compares Virginia to other states, we're doing well in many ways, but we've just gone a little too far, and we need to figure out how to find that happy medium.
I like that expression, taming
the pendulum. Isn't
That's
that
good.
a funny one?
That is good.
Yeah.
That is very good.
That's Laurie McCullough from the curriculum development crowd. That was her phrase, and
Yes.
It's always a matter of finding the right balance. Testing, assessment, consistent assessments that you're able to compare apples to apples across communities, across the nation, has a very useful role. And yet we're at the point where we're just doing too much. I recently visited a school out in Henrico County, Eastern Henrico, a school with a very high free and reduced lunch population, a lot of young people coming from families of poverty, but that's doing well. It's not fully accredited, but it's inching up. But these schools, these kids are telling me about the SOL tests. My kids took SOL tests, but it was before they went through the the changeover to the much more rigorous standards that we're using now. And these 8-year-olds are taking tests that start at 8:30 in the morning. They go till lunchtime. They break and have a silent lunch because they can't talk. It has to be a monitored silent. And then they go back to finishing the test. And I asked this one young lady who was like the student government president, and she was a 5th grader now. But you're this bright little kid, right? You probably wrap the thing up in an hour. Oh no, I'm never done by lunchtime. It takes the smart kids 4, 5, and 6 hours at age 8 and 10. I couldn't do a test that long. We don't ask adults to do that kind of endurance. Maybe on the bar exam, but that's about right. The only time I can think I ever did a test that made me have to be that focused for that long. And to think that an 8-year-old is being asked to do that in multiple subjects. Now, we cut back some last year, but still, the 8-year-olds in 3rd grade are being asked to do it in reading and math. 5th graders are asked to be doing it in multiple subjects. We've got to find a happier medium.
Oh, I think the general population, if they don't have a child or a grandchild experiencing that, probably does not know, doesn't understand how rigorous that is, and how much it can almost push some teachers to be teaching toward the test.
Well, not even just teaching toward the test, just getting so frustrated that they're leaving the profession. We've got high teacher turnover, especially in our most challenged schools. We've got teachers and students frustrated that we're squeezing the joy of learning out of the process and for teachers and students. And yet then I do get to see great teachers who are doing amazing things despite these obstacles and figuring out how to make it all work even with everything they're doing. So, we're very blessed with our wonderful education system in Virginia, but we'd like to give them a little more room to teach.
Now, in your whole area of service to the Commonwealth, career and technical ed also falls. I don't know if there's anything you want to share with the viewers about how that's going this session.
Yes. Career and technical education is one of the things that's really up and coming in Virginia in all kinds of ways, and there are a number of workforce bills that are passing, working their way through the legislature, that are working to help align all of our workforce efforts at the K-12 and higher ed level to better align it with job opportunities, and especially good quality job opportunities. In the K-12 world, we've actually increased the number of credentials where industry recognized credentials that students are getting before they graduate has almost doubled over the last few years, and that's because of been a real deliberate push. And one of the things I think you'd find fun, David, is that sort of what you might think of as sort of the old-fashioned tech school and then the high-tech STEM world are kind of finding each other in the middle somewhere.
Yes.
You know, the high-tech, low-tech are all the new tech, and it's really exciting to see some of the things going on in our schools.
Well, that really is, and because I think that, and then higher ed falls into your area of service too, but certainly here around Capitol Square you hear lots of comments that career and technical ed is what some students need to be looking at, while others are looking at other more traditional.
If you just think of it as all of our students need to have more rigorous STEM.
Yes.
We just all need to be able to think logically and be able to access, to have a comfort level with the STEM fields. And we do need more who are starting to think about entering into the STEM professions. Can I show you my show and tell?
I
brought you a fun show and tell.
I was wondering what that was.
I had an opportunity to visit. Here, I'll show the camera. An opportunity to visit. This was actually, I was up to visit UVA in the spring, and this is a joint project. I've seen now 2 different schools that were involved in this project, but a joint project of the Curry School of Education and the Engineering School at UVA, with the Albemarle and Charlottesville City Schools.
Interesting.
And they've got middle school kids who are studying 19th century patents. They're doing it in conjunction with the Smithsonian, who's made all these patent records available digitally. So these kids they're doing history, because they're researching how machines were created in the 19th century. And then they are replicating their own versions of those machines using their 3D printers. So all these middle schools now have the capacity to create pieces like this using their 3D printers. And so when I went to visit the engineering school, a young lady from Buford Middle School, which is a Charlottesville City middle school, and let's just say a school with plenty of families from challenging financial circumstances, et cetera. But this young lady had built this machine. She and her partner had researched this patent and had created, this is called a solenoid machine. And I can't completely tell you how it works, but when she made it work anyway, this piece goes back and forth, and then it makes the wheel turn. So it's translating this energy into something going circular, and presented this to me as my gift. And this young lady, I said to her, and she also had to present about it at some kind of science fair kind of competition, had to present then to me, and did a lovely job explaining to a young African-American woman. I asked her, so when did you get started on this? Oh, well, I went to some camp last summer and got me engaged in this. And I said, before that, had you ever had any interest in going into science or engineering or anything like that? She said, never heard of any of it. But some principal at her school had said, hey, you should go to this thing. And she said, okay, got a free summer, let's go. And now I said, what's your career plan? I'm going to the UVA School of Engineering. You know,
what a story! What a story!
That's the kind of and the blending different fields together, the engineering and the oral presentation skills, working with a team. This is what education in the 21st century should look like.
Yes.
And lighting a fire towards career possibilities where there are needs and opportunities that a young lady might not have even heard of. So that's my show and tell.
I've got to.
I need to figure out.
This.
I need to go back and get her to show me how to work it, because
that is really wonderful. And as you said before, even studying the history too, going back and researching.
Right. And the Smithsonian folks come down and the kids go up. I visited Sutherland Middle School in Albemarle County. That's also part of this project on a different trip, and they were making a telegraph based on the original telegraph designs and communicating from the middle school. They'd had a long wire stretched across the parking lot to the elementary school on the other side of the parking lot. And I got to test their first ...
sending the message. Yes. Oh, that is.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
That certainly is. And I think that as you were saying, with the more credentialing that's taking place.
Yes.
In the secondary education.
Yes.
And then
exposing. Most kids are going to need still, well, really, even more so, kids need post-secondary education to get to successful careers. 2/3 of all jobs require some kind of post-secondary. But more and more, we're realizing that doesn't necessarily mean 4 years of college in a liberal arts program. It may well mean some kind of non-credit credentialing through a community college program. It might well mean stackable credentials, where somebody starts out getting a nursing assistant degree and then works up to a nursing degree and then might get a bachelor's of nursing or some other health field. Yeah.
Well, tell our viewers some too about higher ed. What's happening this session that you want to report to us on about higher ed?
We are blessed again in Virginia that we have very, very strong higher ed institutions, and they are doing great work all across Virginia. One of the biggest issues for higher ed and K-12 over the years has been funding, and it's been very hard that we've made some very difficult cuts over the last decade in K-12 and higher ed, and the higher ed folks have successfully made a case that we need to reinvest in higher education. And yet it's been hard because our financial challenges continue. As we work to build a new Virginia economy, we're not there yet. Right. And as we're losing defense industry jobs and still building up what are going to be their new replacements, our funding isn't what anybody in the General Assembly or the administration would want it to be. But I think the higher ed folks, we were able to stave off some of the steeper cuts to higher education in next year's budget. We've still got plenty of our agencies that are taking 7% budget cuts in FY16. The Governor McAuliffe protected K-12 education completely, protected higher education in large measure. And with the recent, just the last few weeks, a little bit rosier revenue forecasts, it looks like we're going to be able to add a little bit of money for faculty salary increases, a little bit of money for teacher raises, along with other state employees. And so that's probably one of the most significant things happening in higher education. Obviously, one of the harder things we're wrestling with this session is the area of how do we address sexual violence on campus. You know, Governor McAuliffe started a sexual violence task force back last August, and we have a good group that's come together and is making recommendations due out in June. And yet some of the incidents this fall on campus are some of the very, very sad, tragic incidents, and even the ones that we weren't quite sure what happened in the end, have prompted a lot of activity in the General Assembly this year on how do we handle investigation and reporting of sexual violence incidents on campus. And so there's been a lot of activity around that in the General Assembly as well.
And from the best I can tell, maybe the House and the Senate have passed slightly different versions, and so that's still working its way on
yes,
through
it's still
before
working
it gets
its way
to the
through.
governor.
I think there's been some good bipartisan effort, and I think those bills, if folks started out in different places, not along party lines really, but in just very, very different places on what was the best. Everybody agrees that we need to do better, but what does that mean to do better? But I think those bills are working their way through into a more sophisticated, nuanced place than they started, and or maybe coming close to each other and going to pass into something significant.
Okay, now before our time's up, we still have a few minutes.
Yeah.
What's some other area that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, I'll just talk a little bit about some of the matters that are at issue in the budget. We do have a number of initiatives that Governor McAuliffe put into his introduced budget that I, knock on wood, hope are going to do all right in the final budget, that would be helping, again, some of our most challenged schools, some money for some training for principals. Leadership in our challenging school environments is really crucial. School boards, superintendents, principals. So we have really a number of budget initiatives and other initiatives that are really all focused on those issues. And I think those are all faring pretty well. There's some money to support more sophisticated versions of some of our tests that may make the burden a little easier on everybody. One of the bigger issues, two bigger issues that impact some of our challenged communities is the First Lady's Nutrition Initiative. I'm very, very happy that both the House and the Senate put money in to support that Breakfast After the Bell program, working out some details on that. And then pre-K. And we are very grateful that the federal government gave us a big new grant in the fall to be able to expand pre-K in at-risk communities and to really work on how we can improve public-private partnerships in that area, because that's really going to be key to how can we expand to meet all the need. Pre-K is one of the best evidence-based solutions to how to get kids off on the right track, especially kids from at-risk backgrounds, and we would love to help Virginia move in that direction, and that federal grant is going to help us a lot. There are some differences between the House and the Senate budget on pre-K that we think are important, and we're going to be working with both of them to try to help come to a good conclusion.
Yes, yes. And if you didn't have enough to do in Richmond and Virginia, also you, on behalf of the administration, are in Washington, and in our closing minute or so, I think our viewers would be interested to know what we were talking about just before we started the show, about how educators in Virginia are working together. And
I'm very proud. So I'm sure you and your viewers have seen in the news that in the Congress this year, there's a big push to reauthorize the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that was originally passed in the 1960s and reauthorized early this millennium in the Bush administration under the No Child Left Behind rubric, and has really been without formal authorization in Congress for 7 or 8 years now, because people have had a hard time coming together over what the next generation should be. And now there's a very serious effort to try to reauthorize that legislation in Congress this year. And our federal counterparts have asked for our input, and I'm very pleased that a group of the Virginia education stakeholders from the PTA, the Teachers Association, the Superintendents Association, the Principal Associations, the school boards have all come together with a common set of recommendations that we can make to our congressman. And it's all around more support for pre-K, more support for kids in need, and more flexibility. We desperately want more flexibility on the assessment and accountability.
Secretary Holton, we thank you so much. Wish we had another half hour, but thank you so much for giving us this report, and we look forward to talking with you after the session.
Great, David. Thanks. Good to be with you as always.
Thank you.
Good.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources, a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward.
Haley Buick GMC in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Intelligent Illuminations, helping you manage, monitor, and control your streetlights. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.